A man in a Texas police uniform walked into a warehouse under the cover of a special operation. In 18 minutes, he walked out with over $8 million. The problem is, he didn't exist. And 6 hours later, three black pickup trucks with no license plates were chasing him down the highway, cartel weapons in their trunks. I traced this route. I spoke to witnesses. I found documents that were never meant to be seen. And here's everything I managed to piece together. Before I take you through this unbelievable story, I just have one small favor to ask. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button if you're into true crime stories like this, and drop a comment below. Let me know what city you're watching from and what time it is right now. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep digging for more high-quality stories like this one, ones that most people never get to hear. I don't have his real name. After 8 months of investigation, dozens of interviews, and thousands of dollars spent chasing leads across 3 states, nobody would give it to me. They just called him Jenkins. Whether that was Jake or Jackie, his last name remains a mystery. What I do know comes from Maria Santos, a security supervisor who worked with him at various locations around Houston between 2016 and 2019. She agreed to meet me at a diner outside the city, nervously checking the parking lot every few minutes while she talked. He worked the overnight shifts mostly, she told me, stirring sugar into coffee she never drank. Office buildings, warehouses, places where cops would show up for routine checks. He wasn't like the other guards. He watched everything. How they moved, how they talked, what equipment they carried. Maria showed me photos from company events. Jenkins always in the background, never front and center, but always there. Average height, brown hair, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him, which was probably the point. He asked weird questions, Maria continued, like, what forms did the cops bring when they did evidence transfers? How did they talk to each other on the radio? Little things that seemed innocent enough, but now, she shook her head and looked out the window again. I managed to track down 3 other people who had worked with Jenkins during this period. A guard named Tommy Rodriguez told me Jenkins once spent an entire shift timing how long it took police to respond to different types of calls. Another guard, who wouldn't give me his name, said Jenkins had collected discarded police paperwork from trash cans after inspections. He was building something, this anonymous guard told me over the phone. Like he was studying to be a cop, except he never applied to any academy, just kept watching and learning. The breakthrough came when I found Jennifer Walsh, a former police supply clerk who remembered selling equipment to someone matching Jenkins' description in early 2019. She had records, receipts for radio equipment, uniform accessories, even official forms and letterheads. He said he was starting a private security company, Walsh told me, had all the right paperwork, business license, tax ID, seemed legitimate. But now that you mention it, he knew exactly what he wanted. Didn't need to see a catalog or ask questions, like he'd been planning his purchases for months. The equipment purchases painted a picture. Jenkins was assembling everything needed to impersonate a law enforcement officer. But this wasn't some amateur operation. Every purchase was from a different vendor, paid for with cash, spread out over months to avoid attracting attention. I found the storage unit where he kept it all. Unit 247 at Lone Star Storage, rented under the name James Morrison with a fake ID. The manager, Bob Hendricks, remembered him well. Quiet guy, always paid in cash, never caused any trouble, Hendricks told me. Came by maybe once a week, usually late at night. I figured he was just storing stuff from a divorce or something. When the rental expired and nobody claimed the contents, Hendricks had to inventory everything before disposal. That's how I know what Jenkins had accumulated. 2 complete police uniforms, radio equipment, fake badges and IDs, boxes of official-looking forms, even handcuffs and body armor. Professional-grade stuff, Hendricks said, not costume shop garbage. The real deal. But collecting equipment was just the beginning. I found evidence that Jenkins had been conducting surveillance on a specific target for months, and what he discovered would make him $8 million richer if he could stay alive long enough to spend it. The warehouse sat on Industrial Boulevard, 40 miles southeast of Houston. From the outside, it looked like 100 other anonymous buildings in the area. Concrete walls, small windows, chain-link fence. But according to DEA records I obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, it had been flagged as a potential money laundering operation since 2018. I spoke with Detective Ray Morrison, no relation to Jenkins' fake identity, who had worked financial crimes for Houston PD before retiring last year. Over beers at a sports bar in Katy, he explained how these operations work. They're not banks, but they move bank-level money, Morrison told me. Cash comes in from drug sales, gets mixed with legitimate business revenue, then gets moved through a network of shell companies until it comes out clean on the other side. Morrison had never been inside the specific warehouse Jenkins targeted, but he'd seen similar operations. Minimal security on the outside because they don't want to attract attention. But inside, armed guards, multiple safes, enough firepower to fight off a small army. How did Jenkins learn about this place? I spent weeks following leads, and the answer came from an unexpected source. Carlos Mendoza, a former warehouse employee who agreed to talk only after I assured him I wouldn't use his real name. I worked there for 6 months in 2019, Mendoza told me during a phone interview. Loading and unloading trucks mostly. But you see things. Like how every Tuesday and Friday, these vans would show up with duffel bags. Heavy ones. And how the guards would always count everything twice. Mendoza quit in September 2019, 3 months before the robbery. He'd gotten nervous about what he was witnessing, especially after another employee asked too many questions and suddenly stopped showing up for work. Before I left, this guy approached me at a gas station, Mendoza continued. White guy, average looking, said he was doing research for a book about organized crime. Asked me about my job, what kind of security they had, when the money deliveries happened. Paid me $500 cash for the conversation. The description matched Jenkins. But how had he known to approach Mendoza in the first place? The answer came from surveillance footage I obtained from the gas station where they met. The cameras showed Jenkins' car sitting in the parking lot for over an hour before Mendoza arrived, suggesting he'd been following the warehouse employee's routine. He knew my schedule better than I did, Mendoza admitted, which was creepy, but the money was real. Through county property records, I discovered Jenkins had rented an apartment with a direct line of sight to the warehouse entrance. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, remembered him as a model tenant who paid 6 months in advance and kept odd hours. He was always at the window with binocular, she told me. Said he was a bird watcher. But there aren't many birds in that industrial area. I found receipt records showing Jenkins had purchased long-range photography equipment, digital recording devices, and GPS tracking units. He'd been conducting professional-level surveillance on the warehouse for months, documenting guard rotations, delivery schedules, and security procedures. The final piece of the puzzle came from traffic camera footage I requested from the city. It shows Jenkins' car following various warehouse employees after their shifts ended, learning their routes, their habits, their vulnerabilities. He wasn't just planning a robbery, he was conducting military-grade intelligence gathering. But surveillance can only tell you so much. To really understand the operation, Jenkins needed someone on the inside. And according to phone records I discovered, he found exactly what he was looking for. The phone records came from a burner phone found in Jenkins' abandoned storage unit. Most of the numbers led nowhere. Other disposable phones that had been disconnected months ago. But one number was different. It belonged to Miguel Santos, one of the warehouse security guards. Santos had been working for the cartel for 8 years when Jenkins contacted him. According to his widow, whom I tracked down in Laredo, Santos had been getting nervous about his job for months before the robbery. Miguel was scared, Rosa Santos told me in her small apartment, her voice barely above a whisper. He said the people he worked for were getting more violent, more paranoid. He wanted out, but you don't just quit that kind of job. Phone records show 17 calls between Jenkins and Santos over a 3-month period. The calls were short, never more than 5 minutes, and always initiated by Jenkins. Rosa Santos confirmed that her husband had been receiving calls from an unknown number during this time. He would step outside to take them, she remembered. When I asked who it was, he said it was work-related, but Miguel looked worried after those calls, like he was being pulled into something he couldn't control. I believe Jenkins was blackmailing Santos. Through surveillance, Jenkins had documented Santos skimming money from the warehouse operation. Small amounts, but enough to get him killed if his employers found out. The phone calls were Jenkins offering Santos a choice: help with the robbery or have evidence of the theft sent to the cartel. But Santos made a different choice. Instead of helping Jenkins, he decided to warn his employers about the suspicious phone calls. That decision would ultimately save the cartel's money and cost Santos his life. The evidence for this comes from cell tower data I obtained through a private investigator who specializes in telecommunications records. On the morning of the robbery, Santos made 2 phone calls that weren't on his usual contact list. The first went to a number registered to a shell company called Southwest Security Solutions. The second went to the same number 23 minutes later. Southwest Security Solutions, according to incorporation documents filed with the Texas Secretary of State, was a one-man consulting firm owned by someone named Eduardo Vasquez. But when I tried to track down Vasquez, I hit a dead end. The address on the incorporation papers was a vacant lot. The phone number was disconnected. The social security number belonged to a man who had died in 1987. Southwest Security Solutions was a front company, almost certainly operated by the cartel to handle communications with their warehouse security team. Santos wasn't just calling his boss. He was calling the people who would decide whether Jenkins lived or died. Security camera footage from the warehouse shows exactly what happened on December 15, 2019. I obtained this footage through a contact in law enforcement who agreed to share it on condition of anonymity. 8:42 a.m., a white van with police markings pulls into the warehouse parking lot. 4 men in uniform get out, moving with purpose but not urgency. The lead figure, presumably Jenkins, carries a briefcase and clipboard. 8:45 a.m. Jenkins approaches the front desk where Kevin Martinez, a 23-year-old guard, is drinking coffee and scrolling through his phone. The footage shows Jenkins sliding documents across the desk while speaking. Martinez looks confused, reads the papers, makes a phone call. According to the incident report I obtained from the responding officers, Martinez later told investigators that the documents appeared to be official court orders requiring a search and inventory of evidence stored in the warehouse. The paperwork looked legitimate, complete with official seals and case numbers. 8:47 a.m. Martinez finishes his phone call and waves the team through. The footage shows the 4 men entering the main warehouse area, where 5 guards are on duty. Martinez at the front, 2 playing cards in the break room, 1 doing paperwork in an office, and Santos walking his perimeter route. 8:52 a.m. Jenkins approaches the card players. Audio quality is poor, but lip-reading analysis suggests he's explaining their presence as a routine inspection. The guards look annoyed but don't argue. 1 asks to see identification. Jenkins shows a badge. 8:58 a.m. Santos appears. Unlike the other guards, he watches Jenkins' team carefully. He stands in the background for several minutes, observing their behavior, checking their equipment. 9:02 a.m. The team uses bolt cutters to open the lock on room C7 where the money is stored. This is when Santos makes his first phone call to the shell company number. 9:05 a.m. Inside room C7, the cameras capture the moment Jenkins and his team see the money. 47 duffel bags, each containing approximately $170,000 in cash. $8 million total, exactly as Jenkins' intelligence had indicated. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. I interviewed the forensic accountant who later analyzed the warehouse operation for federal prosecutors. According to her records, the money in room C7 represented 3 weeks of accumulated cash from drug sales across Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. It was supposed to be moved to Mexico the following day. Jenkins couldn't have known about the timing unless someone told him, the accountant explained. The accumulation of that much cash in one location was purely coincidental. Or it was an inside job. Shouted. 8 a.m. Loading begins. The footage shows Jenkins' team working with practiced efficiency, moving bags onto a cart and wheeling them toward the exit. But now Santos is making his second phone call, and his body language suggests urgency. 8:18 a.m. First cartload reaches the van. 12 bags, approximately $2 million. They're back inside for the second load when Santos receives a return call. The change in his demeanor is immediate. He starts moving toward room C7 with his hand on his weapon. This is where the security footage becomes crucial evidence. It shows Santos drawing his gun as he approaches the evidence room, but he never gets the chance to use it. One of Jenkins' team members, impossible to identify due to camera angles, fires first. Santos goes down, but not before shouting a warning that brings the other guards running. The next 3 minutes are chaos. Gunfire, bodies falling, Jenkins' team finishing their loading while under fire. When it's over, 5 people are dead and $8 million is gone. But who were the 3 men helping Jenkins? Despite months of investigation, I still don't know. They appear in the security footage, help load the money, disappear completely. It's like they were professionals who knew exactly how to avoid leaving traces. This is the part of the story that keeps me awake at night. 4 men walked into that warehouse, but only one walked out with the money. The 3 others, the ones who helped Jenkins load those duffel bags, vanished as completely as if they'd never existed. I've analyzed the security footage frame by frame, had facial recognition software run on every clear image, even hired a private investigator who specializes in identifying people from surveillance video. Nothing. No matches in any database, no hits from any missing persons reports, no connection to any known associates of Jenkins. Detective Morrison, the retired financial crimes investigator, offered his perspective when I showed him the footage. Professional operators know how to avoid cameras. They wear hats, keep their heads down, position themselves so their faces are never fully visible. These guys knew what they were doing. The clearest images show 3 men in police uniforms moving with military precision, but their faces remain frustratingly obscured. One appears to be tall and thin, another shorter and more muscular, the third average height with dark hair. Beyond those basic physical descriptions, they remain ghosts. I tried tracking Jenkins' known associates from his security guard days, thinking he might have recruited people from his professional network. Maria Santos, the security supervisor who knew Jenkins, was adamant that she'd never seen any of the 3 men before. Jenkins was a loner, she told me. Didn't socialize with other guards, didn't go to company parties, kept to himself. If he had partners for this thing, he found them somewhere else. Where else? I spent weeks investigating private military contractors, thinking Jenkins might have connected with other ex-military personnel. I checked gun ranges, tactical training facilities, survival schools, anywhere that someone with Jenkins' background might go to find like-minded individuals. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a bartender named Mike at a dive bar in Huntsville called The Bunker. When I showed him surveillance photos from the warehouse, he studied them carefully and nodded. "I think I seen 2 of these guys," Mike told me. "Not together, but they both came in here over the summer before your robbery thing. Kept to themselves, paid cash, didn't talk much. But they had that look, you know? Like military guys who'd seen some shit." Mike's description was frustratingly vague, but it suggested Jenkins had recruited his team locally, possibly from among veterans who'd fallen on hard times. The Bunker, according to Mike, was the kind of place where guys with military backgrounds went to drink away their problems. "Lot of guys come through here who did tours in Iraq or Afghanistan," Mike explained. "Come back home and can't find work, can't adjust, got skills nobody wants to pay for." Jenkins talked to a few of them. I remember that. Real quiet conversations. But even this lead went nowhere. Mike couldn't remember names, didn't have contact information, couldn't provide anything more concrete than vague descriptions and impressions. The most disturbing discovery came when I researched missing persons reports from the Houston area in the months following the robbery. 3 men matching the general descriptions from the security footage had been reported missing by family members. But when I tried to follow up on these reports, I hit bureaucratic walls. One report had been withdrawn by the family due to new information. Another was closed when the missing person contacted relatives to confirm his safety. The third was transferred to federal jurisdiction and sealed. I managed to speak with one family member, the sister of a man who'd gone missing 2 weeks after the warehouse robbery. She agreed to meet me only after I promised not to use her name or location. "My brother was ex-Army," she told me. "Did 3 tours in Afghanistan, came back with PTSD and couldn't hold a job. Last time I saw him, he said he had something lined up. Good money, but he couldn't tell me details. That was December 2019. Never heard from him again." When I showed her the warehouse surveillance footage, she studied it carefully. "Could be him," she said finally. "Right height, right build. But the face," she shook her head. "I just can't tell for sure." 3 men helped Jenkins steal $8 million. Then they vanished. No bodies were ever found. No arrests were ever made. No evidence of what happened to them after they left that warehouse. It's like they were erased from existence. The first sign that something had gone wrong came just 2 hours after the robbery. Local police found 3 bodies floating in a drainage canal 2 miles from the warehouse, all shot execution style, all matching the general descriptions of Jenkins' missing accomplices. The bodies were discovered by a jogger at 11:20 a.m. on December 15th, less than 2 hours after Jenkins and his team had driven away from the warehouse. Three men floating face down in the murky water of Buffalo Bayou, each with a single bullet hole behind the right ear. I spoke with Detective Sarah Chen, who caught the case. She's still active duty, so our conversation was unofficial, but she was willing to share general information about the investigation. Professional hits, Chen told me over coffee at a diner near police headquarters. Small caliber, probably a .22, close-range execution style, the kind of thing you see when someone wants to send a message. The bodies were stripped of identification, but Chen noticed details that told a story. Military tattoos, old scars that suggested combat experience, physical conditioning that didn't come from civilian jobs. These weren't random victims. Someone knew they were coming, Chen said. Someone was waiting for them. The location of the bodies was significant. The drainage canal was 3 miles from the warehouse, but only half a mile from a truck stop on Highway 59, where security cameras captured Jenkins' police van stopping at 10:15 a.m. The timestamp shows the van was there for exactly 8 minutes before leaving, enough time to drop off 3 passengers. I obtained the truck stop footage through the same law enforcement contact who provided the warehouse surveillance. It shows Jenkins' van pulling up to a remote corner of the parking lot, but the camera angle doesn't reveal what happens next. When the van leaves, it's impossible to tell how many people are still inside. My theory is that Jenkins had arranged to meet his accomplices at the truck stop to split the money. But instead of dividing $8 million 4 ways, he decided to keep it all for himself. The 3 men who'd helped him execute the perfect robbery became the first victims of his betrayal. But that theory fell apart when I discovered evidence that Jenkins wasn't the one who killed his partners. Phone records from the burner phone in Jenkins' storage unit show he made 1 call after leaving the warehouse. The call lasted 43 seconds and went to a number that belonged to another disposable phone, one that was never found. More importantly, traffic cameras along Highway 59 show Jenkins' van heading south toward the Mexican border. At the same time, the truck stop cameras show activity in the parking lot. Unless Jenkins could be in 2 places at once, someone else was waiting for his accomplices. The real betrayal had come from inside the cartel organization. According to my source in the DEA, cartels often use subcontractors for security work. Former military, ex-police, independent operators who work for whoever pays best. Some of these contractors play multiple sides, selling information to the highest bidder. It's possible Jenkins thought he was working with partners, the DEA source explained during a phone interview, but those partners were actually working for the cartel. The plan might have been to let Jenkins do the heavy lifting, then eliminate the witnesses and recover the money. If that's true, then Jenkins was smarter or more paranoid than anyone gave him credit for. While his supposed partners went to what they thought was a money-splitting meeting, Jenkins continued south with $8 million in cash, already 2 hours ahead of the pursuit that was about to begin. The 3 bodies in the drainage canal were never identified. After 90 days, they were buried in unmarked graves in a county cemetery outside Houston. The case was officially classified as gang-related violence and filed away with hundreds of other unsolved murders. But someone knew who they were. Someone had hired them, equipped them, sent them to work with Jenkins, and that same someone had ordered their execution when the job was done. By the time the cartel realized Jenkins had slipped their trap, he had a crucial head start. But in cartel territory, 2 hours isn't much of an advantage when you're carrying $8 million in stolen money. I drove that stretch of highway, Interstate 35 south of Austin, to understand the geography Jenkins was dealing with. It's flat, straight, and mostly empty. Perfect for high-speed pursuits. Perfect for the kind of violence that doesn't make the evening news because there are no witnesses. The first attempt to stop Jenkins came at mile marker 187, according to Texas Department of Transportation traffic cameras I accessed through a Freedom of Information Act request. The footage shows Jenkins' van maintaining steady speed in the right lane when 3 black pickup trucks appear from behind. No license plates. Windows tinted so dark they might as well be painted. They don't try to be subtle. This is an execution squad, not a law enforcement operation. I had the traffic camera footage analyzed by a private security firm that specializes in vehicle identification. Their report identified the pickup trucks as late-model Ford F-150s, modified with reinforced bumpers and run-flat tires. Professional pursuit vehicles. The attack begins immediately. Muzzle flashes are visible even in broad daylight as the pickup trucks open fire with automatic weapons. The van swerves using the concrete median barrier as cover, while bullets spark off asphalt and punch through the vehicle's body panels. What happens next is either incredible driving skill or incredible luck. Jenkins hits his brakes at exactly the right moment, causing one of the pickup trucks to overshoot and slam into oncoming traffic. The explosion is visible from 5 miles away. Traffic camera footage from the next exit shows Jenkins' van taking the ramp at dangerous speed. Tires smoking, the vehicle lifting onto 2 wheels before slamming back down. One of the pursuing pickup trucks tries to follow and clips the guardrail, flipping 3 times before coming to rest upside down in a field. But they're still coming, and Jenkins is running out of road. I found the place where it ended, a construction site outside Cedar Creek, Texas. When I visited last month, most of the equipment was gone, but you can still see bullet holes in some of the concrete barriers. You can still see burn marks where vehicles caught fire. Local police reports, which I obtained through public records requests, describe the scene as multiple vehicle accident with fatalities. 7 people dead, millions of dollars in property damage. No clear explanation for what had happened. The responding officers found Jenkins' van, bullet-riddled and burned out, but no bodies inside. They found the remains of 2 pickup trucks and their occupants. They found shell casings from multiple weapons, blood trails leading in different directions, and evidence of a prolonged gun battle. What they didn't find was Jenkins or the money, but someone did find Jenkins that night. A gas station security camera 40 miles away captured footage of a man matching his description, wounded and alone, filling up a Honda Civic with cash from a duffel bag. It was the last confirmed sighting of the most wanted man in Texas. The gas station footage came from a Shell station outside Bastrop, recorded at 11:47 p.m. on December 15th. I obtained it from the station owner, who agreed to share it after I explained what I was investigating. The man in the video matches Jenkins' general description. Average height, brown hair, wearing civilian clothes instead of the police uniform from earlier. But what's most striking is his behavior. He's clearly injured, favoring his left arm, moving carefully like someone in pain. He pays for gas with cash from a duffel bag, but he's smart about it. Only pulls out small bills, nothing that would attract attention. The clerk, a teenager named Marcus Webb, whom I tracked down and interviewed, remembered the transaction. Guy seemed hurt, Webb told me, had blood on his shirt, kept checking the parking lot like he expected trouble. Bought gas, some bandages, bottle of water, paid with 20s and left. The Honda Civic wasn't stolen, I checked. It was registered to a fictitious identity that traced back to the same fake ID mill Jenkins had used for other purchases. He'd been planning his escape route for months, positioning vehicles and supplies along multiple routes out of Texas. After the gas station, Jenkins vanished for 6 days. No camera sightings, no credit card transactions, no communication with anyone who might identify him. It was like he'd simply ceased to exist. The next confirmed sighting came from an unexpected source. Maria Gonzalez, a coyote who specialized in moving people across the Mexican border. I found her through a network of contacts who work on immigration issues, and she agreed to speak with me on condition of anonymity. He showed up at my place around midnight on December 21st, Maria told me during a phone interview. Bleeding through his shirt, had this duffel bag he wouldn't let go of. Said he needed to get across the river, no questions asked. The price was $200,000 in cash, an astronomical amount for a border crossing, but Jenkins paid it without negotiating. He reached into the duffel bag and counted out the bills right there on Maria's kitchen table. I knew he was in serious trouble, she said. You don't pay that kind of money unless someone very dangerous is trying to kill you. But the money was real, and I'd seen worse. They left before dawn in a garbage truck that Maria used for her smuggling operation. Jenkins rode in the back, hidden under bags of trash and construction debris. It was a 6-hour drive to a crossing point that Maria had been using for years, a section of the Rio Grande where Border Patrol checked only twice a week. The crossing itself was routine. Wade across the river at a shallow point, walk 2 miles through desert to a safe house on the Mexican side. Maria had done it hundreds of times, but this felt different. When we got to the safe house, he paid me the rest of what he owed, plus a bonus, Maria remembered. Then he asked me something strange. He wanted to know if I'd ever heard of anyone who just vanished completely, like they'd never existed. I told him, yeah, it happens all the time down here. Jenkins nodded like that was exactly what he wanted to hear. Then he picked up his duffel bag and walked into the night. Maria never saw him again. But I have a copy of the custom scan from that garbage truck. The border crossing has automated systems that photograph the contents of all vehicles, even garbage trucks. In one frame, you can see Jenkins, half conscious, lying next to a toolbox. It's the last confirmed image of the man who stole $8 million from the cartel and disappeared without a trace. 6 months after the robbery, 2 separate investigations were underway. Law enforcement was treating it as a gang violence case. 5 dead at a warehouse, multiple bodies along a highway, obviously drug-related, but no clear suspects or motives. But the cartel was conducting their own investigation, playing by very different rules. Bodies started appearing throughout 2020. People who might have helped Jenkins, might have known something, might have seen something they shouldn't have. A motel clerk in Austin, a gas station attendant in San Antonio, a document forger in Houston. Each death was made to look like something else. Car accidents, drug overdoses, random street crime. But I found the pattern by cross-referencing newspaper reports, police records, and coroner's reports from across Texas. 17 suspicious deaths between January and December 2020, all connected, however loosely, to the warehouse robbery. All involving people who had some contact, however brief, with someone matching Jenkins' description in the months before or after the heist. I interviewed relatives of 3 victims. They all told the same story. Their loved one had mentioned meeting someone new, someone who asked questions about their work, someone who paid cash for information. Then weeks or months later, tragedy struck. My brother said this guy was writing a book about crime in Houston, one sister told me. Paid him $500 to talk about his job at a check cashing place. 2 months later, Danny dies in a hit and run. Cops said it was probably a drunk driver, but Danny was careful. Real careful. The cartel was cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might lead back to Jenkins. But they never found Jenkins himself. In 2021, the killing stopped. The cartel, it seemed, had given up their search. Word on the street was that El Jefe himself had called off the hunt. Better to write off $8 million than to keep losing resources chasing a ghost. But there were still independent operators looking. Bounty hunters attracted by rumors of a $5 million reward. Private investigators hired by insurance companies. Internet sleuths convinced they could solve the case that stumped law enforcement. I spoke with one of these bounty hunters, a former Marine named Jake Morrison, who spent 2 years trying to track Jenkins. He agreed to meet me at a bar in El Paso, but only after I convinced him I wasn't working for anyone who might want to claim his research. Jenkins didn't just disappear, Morrison told me over whiskey and beer. He became someone else. New identity, new background, probably new face if he was smart about it. $8 million buys a lot of plastic surgery. Morrison had followed leads across Mexico, Guatemala, even as far south as Colombia. He chased sightings, investigated rumors, spent his own money pursuing a man who might not even exist anymore. The thing about Jenkins, Morrison said, is that he understood something most people don't. The perfect crime isn't about not getting caught. It's about making people think you've been caught when you really haven't. 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call that changed everything I thought I knew about this case. The caller said they had information about Jenkins, but they'd only share it in person. What they told me suggests that Jenkins isn't just hiding from the cartel. He's been hunting them. The woman who met me at a coffee shop in Dallas was nervous, checking the parking lot every few minutes, speaking in whispers despite the ambient noise. She said her name was Sandra, but I don't think that was true. I knew him before all this happened, she told me. Not Jenkins, that wasn't his real name. I knew him when he worked for the government. According to Sandra, the man we called Jenkins had been employed by a federal agency she wouldn't name, doing work she couldn't describe, in places that don't officially exist. Someone with security clearance, specialized training, and access to resources most people can't imagine. He always said the perfect crime wasn't about getting away with money, Sandra told me. It was about getting away with your life while making your enemies think you were dead. She told me about a pattern of deaths that had been overlooked by law enforcement. Cartel soldiers, money launderers, warehouse operators, all dying in what appeared to be unrelated incidents across Mexico and Central America. All shot execution style with small caliber weapons. All connected, however distantly, to the organization that had operated the warehouse Jenkins robbed. He's not hiding from them, Sandra said. He's hunting them, systematically eliminating everyone who was involved in trying to kill him. I asked her for proof, for evidence, for anything that could confirm this incredible story. She finished her coffee and stood up to leave. Check the obituaries from Guadalajara, she said. Look for Eduardo Vasquez, the man who really owned Southwest Security Solutions. Found dead in his swimming pool last month. Single gunshot wound. No witnesses. Then she walked out of the coffee shop and disappeared into the crowd. I did check the obituaries. Eduardo Vasquez, described as a security consultant, had indeed been found dead in his home in Guadalajara on November 15th. Local police were treating it as a robbery gone wrong, but no money or valuables had been taken. If Sandra was telling the truth, then Jenkins wasn't just a security guard who got lucky. He was a professional with years of training and exactly the skills he'd need for this kind of operation. Someone who knew how to plan a complex robbery, execute it flawlessly, and disappear completely. Someone who was now systematically eliminating the people who had tried to kill him. I don't know what happened to Jenkins. I don't know if the man who walked into that warehouse still exists, or if he's become someone else entirely. What I do know is this: $8 million disappeared, multiple people died, and a man who didn't exist pulled off what might be the perfect crime. The money never resurfaced. No arrests were ever made. The case files sit in cabinets across multiple jurisdictions, officially unsolved but quietly forgotten. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate your time. Just give me 30 more seconds. If you enjoyed this story and you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. My team and I work every single day to bring you a brand new story. So if you want to keep hearing more, this small support goes a long way.